Okay, welcome in this lecture about science. And today we are going to talk about science and the attitude of the scientist. And my attention was drawn towards this subject because a friend of mine, who is in fact a very successful engineer, who devotes his entire life to becoming an engineer, I spoke to him a day ago, and he was talking about his study. And he told me that a girl had said to him, well, why are you scientists, you're always so committed with your work, but you never have fun in your lives, and you're always only studying, so when are you hanging out? And when do you have some time to experience some pleasure? And I find this such a dull way of life, and I would never want to have a scientist as boyfriend. That's what she said to him. So then, a friend of mine, he became kind of mad at her, and he said, well, just look at the things you enjoy in life. Just look at the clothing you wear, the car you drive, the movies you watch in the theater, the drinks you drink, and everything you do, you all owe that to science. Because if some people would not have been entirely committed to their work, great scientists such as Newton, or Einstein, or Leibniz, for example, these people were so entirely drawn up into their work that it almost led to the point of obsession. And you mock their obsessiveness with their work, and you mock the seriousness of their attitude. So, do not forget that everything you have, you owe to scientists like these. Because where would the world have been without great thinkers, such as Aristotle or Einstein? Where would we have been? That's what he asked her in return. So, then I said to my friend, after hearing him speak, I said to him that I regard all physics and science merely as tools. Powerful tools, yes. The knowledge of physics and chemistry and biology allows us to manipulate the world in an ever-increasing potentiality. It allows us to do what we want with the world because we can control the processes of nature, thanks to science, thanks to chemistry, biology, physics. But all these tools, no matter how useful they may be, are useless in a world that is conquered by nihilism. Because how trivial are means if we lack the wisdom to present clear and well-grounded goals? So we have all this knowledge, all this technology, but we don't even know where we want to go with it. If we lack the wisdom, the values, and the unity to think about the direction that we really want to work towards with our sciences. Because even though science might help to build a self-sustaining green environment, we are not getting closer to this goal if politicians in America and China keep fighting in the United Nations. And people refer to scientific explanation all the time. If you ask random people on the street, they say, oh, I read this in a science magazine. Oh, this has been scientifically proven. But are they scientists? How many of them are scientists? Do they not blindly rely on expertise? And how dangerous is this reliance in a world where common sense becomes increasingly rare? That's important. We live in a world where common sense becomes increasingly rare. It's really that simple. If you stand at the train, the people are so crowded in front of the train that when the doors go open, the people who need to step out of the train cannot even step out of the train because they forgot it. And instead, they stood in all the way in front of the door. And simple examples like these show how common sense is increasingly rare. So my friend said, but what if all physicists and all scientists had the right ideology or the right mindset, and that they wouldn't merely conform to the awful way society is forming right now? Then he said, then it would be a tool used effectively. Well, sadly enough, our society, in many facets and many features, discourages one to think. Our society, as open as it might be, has a tendency to discourage people to think. For example, the political correctness. Because very many people consider themselves open-minded, and they consider themselves tolerant of all ideas, but then if you point their attention towards the high crime rates among minorities, then they will say, oh, that is not done. Let us not talk about that. But, for example, the orthodoxy of some religions, preventing you to think, because there are some sort of dogmas within these religions that are not to be questioned. Other things that it discourages are thinking is discouraged by the fashion and the media. And people will say, when talked to, they will say that they are perfectly free to live and act according to they want to, and they are living according to the fashion exactly because they are free. Now, they might say that today. And if we look into the past, we can observe some very strange customs indeed. Midsummer Day, or St. John's Day, in medieval times, it was celebrated by burning cats. In some countries, like France, for example. Well, today, we see that it is wrong to do unnecessary harm to animals. But people back then considered it a perfectly acceptable fashion. So we also have to look very critical towards the opinions and fashions and customs in the present. And some people, like that girl that my friend spoke to, well, she obviously does not. So, I spoke some more to my friend, and I really got him to think, because he was very proud of himself, because he was a smart engineer. He was a well-trained mind. He had high grades. He had a glorious future in front of him. But he still did not envision the whole picture. He had the idea that even though he was doing successful experiments and making correct calculation, that he still, despite his success, was not grasping the bigger whole. He was doing science, but he did not even see the results that his effects, that his experiments had on society. So he thought that despite his successful experiments, he was contributing something, but he could no longer see what that something was, and he thought that science had lost touch with the society that it was advancing. And as a result, I said, science is a tool that is worshipped by society as an end in itself. And that again leads to so many people talking about scientific explanations, but how many of them really know anything about science? And no matter how great the breakthroughs of science are, no matter how great breakthrough that scientists make, what do they matter if it's just going to be used for trivial purposes? How can a scientist's life even have purpose, other than his interest in the subject that he studies? But what does his knowledge mean in a society whose intelligence is lowering and decreasing every day? The intelligence is lowering because of this technology and the convenience worship that it has brought with it. Scientists of today are only revered because their workings suit into the convenience worship picture. For example, they can build microwaves, or fast food restaurants, and that technology can be used for all sorts of things to make life a little more convenient. And that is the only reason why they are revered. And the people to whose benefit they work have no understanding of their commitment. They have no understanding of the commitment that the scientific attitude requires, other than to understand the scientist and his work in terms of money. And a scientist is supposed to be an individual who is fascinated about, let's say, a certain working of nature, and sacrifices all to fully understand or explain that phenomenon. But this scientific attitude requires 1. First of all, tremendous determination. And 2, second of all, an incredible intelligence. And these two things are exactly what our current way of life is undermining. And let's say that a scientist does make a breakthrough, then it will be put to no other use than to create more convenience. Scientists are destroying their own species, but they do not see far ahead to see that.